That's where you can find me.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. We got an exciting hour ahead for you guys. We got, of course, a lot of health care for you, but we also have that shooting in Fort Hood, and we have some more updates on that. 11 people were killed. It was apparently done by a mental health doctor who is also on the base. He's one of our troops as well. And, you know, I read mental health doctor, and I'll tell you what, man, some of the craziest folks in the world are psychiatrists. Okay, no offense to my good psychiatrist friends, and my wife's a therapist, so don't get too on me, okay? But I've known a lot of therapists in my life that are totally cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Definitely not my wife. Don't misinterpret, okay? But this guy apparently lost it. He was facing deployment overseas, and he opened fire, and not only 11 killed, but 31 wounded, and then he was killed. 2 other soldiers were detained after the shooting, but they've already been released. So we don't know if that was a mix-up or not. Now, let's keep it real. I'm going to give you the doctor's name, and that might be relevant. His name is Nidal Malik Hassan. Now, look, I'm born Muslim, and so I, no assumptions, et cetera, but it's one of the things you think of, and then the dude's name is Nidal Malik Hassan. Let's see what happens, okay? So, I mean, I could hear Fox News revving up now. I hear him in the background, right? And look, so it's possible that he just went nuts. It's possible he didn't want to go overseas. It's possible he was crazy to begin with. I mean, he had to be crazy to some degree, right? Or it's possible he did this for political reasons. Who knows, right? But we'll find out. At first blush, the name is not a good sign. So I think I have the immunity idol to be able to say that as a person whose whole family is Muslim. But it's not a good sign in terms of why he might have done it, motivations, etc. Just happened today. We'll find out more. We'll tell you later. Okay? Now, we move on to healthcare. And in healthcare, we got a lot of news for you guys. Of course, today we did our protests in New York, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. Let me say, and we're just guessing here because nobody took a hard count, but between those 3 places, just as we had suspected about the number of people that said they were coming on Facebook and some of our website and some of the other places, about 200 to 300 people came in all 3 places combined, okay? And I feel great about that. We had a nice showing in Los Angeles. Finally, on the 3rd event, CNN deigned to send a camera crew. We don't know if they've covered it on the show yet. They didn't reach out to us for a statement, so I don't know how they would cover it, but they did send a camera crew after a lot of pressure. We did a tweet bomb. Over 1,500 people tweeted to CNN saying to give this more coverage. So, there was great participation, and I loved it. Now, other people are chipping in other ways. I don't know if Mike Stark wants it known that it's him, but he's started a YouTube channel, and he's interviewing some senators and congressmen, but I recognize his voice. And he's done some great interviews before. He's the guy who did the interview where the congressman ran from him. And there was the Rocky music in the background as the congressman runs away. There was the guy who hid out looking at pencils for 20 minutes until Mike went away because he didn't want to come out of the store because Mike couldn't go in the store. So Mike went and asked Senator DeMint and Representative King, both Republicans, DeMint's from South Carolina. We'll do that one first. Some simple questions, one of them of which is, do you know how many uninsured you have in your district? Now, look, we're going to get into a discussion of whether that's a fair question or not. But first, let's watch Senator DeMint's answer. Clip number 11.
But even now, you don't know how many people are uninsured in South Carolina?
I don't think anyone. Oh, how many are uninsured?
Yeah.
Well, no one was going to go without health care because everyone can show up at the hospital. That's just not the most efficient way to do it. So,
can you show up at the hospitals if you've got a chronic heart condition and, the ER will give you some kind of Lipitor or cholesterol reduction drug?
If you have any type of event, you can go to the emergency room, but it's not the best
Right,
way
it's got to be an emergency event, so they can't take care of people that need dialysis for
Well, if you go in and need dialysis, you'll get it. But that, again, we can do a lot better with that, and my goal all along.
Yeah, in other words, what? They got the hospitals. If you have an event, you got a heart condition? No problem. Once you have the heart attack, we'll take care of you. By the way, the answer is 19.4% of his state's population is uninsured. That's a whopping number, man, 19.4%. Now, what's fair and what's unfair? Look, asking the question is fair, but if he doesn't know the answer, I'm actually not going to hold it against him. I mean, yeah, I know he's a senator, but he can't carry around a book with all facts about South Carolina, let alone all the health care facts. Ideally, it'd be great if he knew, but he doesn't know. That's not my problem with his answer. Look, how would I answer it if I didn't know it? I'd say, hey, you know what? Thanks for asking that. It's a good question. Let me find out for you. I should know, but right now, off the top of my head, I don't. But let me find out for you, and I'll get back to you. Give me your email, okay? That's how a representative, in this case a senator, should answer the question. Instead, he says, what? So they don't have insurance? Just check it in the damn hospital. That's not a right answer. Now, if you think that answer was bad, wait till you get a load of Representative Steve King. Same question. Let's watch clip 12.
How many people are uninsured in your district?
In my district, the people in my district are calling for freedom. They're saying
you don't know how many people are uninsured.
My freedom taken away by somebody with a
Senator King, I need to press you on
I'm
this.
telling
Do you
you,
know
I
how
know
many
the
people are
answer to this
uninsured?
question. It is my people want freedom.
I gotta go. How many people in your district are uninsured? They want freedom. I'll see you later. That's not an answer. I mean, come on, it's a joke. I mean, like Michelle Bachmann today, they do the teabag protest, and she called it the Super Bowl of freedom. Come on. I mean, this is absurd. What is lower prices or higher prices in healthcare? What does that have to do with freedom? What is, what they do is they do these incredible long stretches. Okay, they say if you have to pay less for health care, that means that's hurting private insurance. And if you're hurting private insurance, that means you're driving more people to a public option. And a public option is government. And since it's government by definition must mean less freedom. And then if freedom was in a movie with Kevin Bacon, that goes to show you that, you see, we're on the side of freedom and you're against freedom. That doesn't make no kind of sense. And you know what else government does? It provides an army which guarantees our freedom, right? I mean, that's what Republicans tell me all the time. Freedom isn't free. It's paid for by the government. Right? So they're stretching all this. The bottom line on all of this, it ain't got nothing to do with freedom. It ain't got nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with the people paying Steve King, Jim DeMint, Michelle Bachmann's bills. And those are corporate lobbyists who want to make more money. That's what this is about. And if you're one of the sucker teabaggers that showed up at these protests thinking that you were out there for freedom, man, did they pull a fast one on you. So now, those are those guys. Now, speaking of Bachmann, let's give you a quick clip. She's got a conspiracy theory about what happened with her, what might be happening earlier today. She was on with Napolitano on Fox News, and he's the one that came up with the theory, but she fully supports it. Let's see what these two Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs guys are going to come up with when they go head-to-head. Clip number 3.
And now I believe there is nothing more convincing or more powerful than the voice and the appearance of a freedom-loving American.
All right, I gotta give
Personal visits do it.
I have to give you a little bit of a warning. I have a friend in the American intelligence community who lives and works around Washington, D.C., who told me, watch out for Mrs. Pelosi making the security requirements almost impossible to get to this rally. You guys have to watch out for that she doesn't do something to make it very difficult for the folks to come to this gathering at noon tomorrow.
Well, she controls the Capitol. She's a very powerful individual, and she controls ingress and egress. And so I think it would be a big mistake for Speaker Pelosi to prevent the American people from coming to their house. This is their house, after all. That's why we need to make this emergency House call on Congress tomorrow. This is it. We don't have any more time. We're expected to vote on this bill either Friday or Saturday. It may be Saturday.
These kooky guys, man, I mean, they're dying for conspiracy theories. I have a friend in the American intelligence community. You know, the funny thing is, conservatives say that all the time. Like in person, I'll be talking to a conservative like, oh, I have some friends who tell me, who the hell are your friends? Friends in the By the way, so what happened, right? Did they have trouble with ingress and regress or egress? No, they didn't have any trouble at all. When Nancy Pelosi was calling the Capitol Police, okay, watch out for the Bachmann people and redirect them. She's not making that call, you lunatics. And of course, they got in and they got out perfectly easily. JR.
This is what I was thinking. This was the day before. So they're figuring, well, what if we have a bad turnout? We need an excuse.
Oh, great point. Exactly right, JR. So like, and their turnout was, I mean, given an enormous amount of money they spent. Americans for Prosperity with the 40 buses, shipping people in, signs, dozen staffers, donuts, everything like that. If it doesn't go well, they're going to be like, oh, Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, you know how she does it. She has tremendous power here. Egress, ingress, pengress, timegress, longress. You know how it is. Okay. One last thought on this. As I was watching the lunatics talk, I thought, oh my God, what if 9/11 happened when a Democrat was president? Do you have any idea the amount of and degree of conspiracy theories they would have had? They'd be like, oh, the Democrats. You see, what they want is they want more government power. And how are they going to get more government power? How are they going to do a power grab? Well, think about it. Oh, they would have gone ballistic. Vince Foster died under Bill Clinton, and they claimed that the Clintons murdered him for how many years? If 9/11 had happened under a Democrat's watch, there would have been conspiracy. I mean, look, of course, there's already conspiracy theories. But put those conspiracy theories in the hands of these lunatics, I guarantee you they would have claimed that the Democrats did it, that it was Pelosi and Reid. Whoever was in office, it was Gore. Guarantee it. So at least we avoided that. Wow. All right, one last funny one for you guys. We're going to clip 7. John Boehner, he's got a copy of the Constitution, and he read it. It's curious the words that came out of the Constitution. Let's watch.
I'm going to stand with you and all freedom-loving Americans against this bill. This is my copy. This is my copy of the Constitution. And I'm going to stand here with our founding fathers who wrote in the preamble, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So join us in saying no to a government takeover of health care.
You moron. That's the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution. I mean, before you do the speech, have you ever looked at it? Why don't you just look at the Constitution? Oh, damn it, that's right. That's the Declaration of Independence. I forgot about that. I said, oh, I got a copy of the Constitution. Let me read it to you. It says, America the beautiful, this land, 'tis of thee. And then it says, I got a fast car. I mean, I don't know. You should read the damn thing before you give the speech. Fast car was a bit random. All right. Yeah.
There's just one thing I wish maybe they'd be asked sometimes. Maybe when they go on these shows, or maybe because I know they're not going to answer when a constituent asks them. Every time they say, I stand with you freedom-loving Americans, ask them, what do you think of the other people who don't agree with you? Because obviously, I mean, they're not saying that 100% of the country, even though they keep saying the majority is against healthcare reform. Okay. So the rest of the country, do they hate America? I want to know what you think they think about America. Do you think they hate freedom? Are they freedom-hating Americans? Are they freedom-loving Nigerians? What are they?
What are they? I love the two options JR set up. Well, if you're not a freedom-loving American, that leaves two possibilities. You're a freedom-hating American, or you're a freedom-loving Nigerian. So, no, JR, we put some of these clips up on YouTube, and the guy who's most universally loved on YouTube is JR. Okay, every time JR speaks, they're like, "Oh, JR's so right, JR's so right. Oh my God, JR nailed it again." But it's true. I mean, you're 100% right. Why don't they ask him? Hey, wait, can you tell me what this is about freedom? And if so, are the people who want a public option to have a little lower premiums on health insurance and make sure that their kids aren't judged too fat or too skinny for health care, do they hate freedom? It's a great question. Now, you think you're going to get that from any of the mainstream media? That's a good one. Not a good one. Look, they're not going to ask him that. Maybe MSNBC will, right? And I'll tell you why they're not going to ask him that. Because they're scared to death of losing access. And if they ask John Boehner that question and he looks like an idiot on camera, well, he's not going to want to come on CNN again. So they're like, all right, instead we serve you this softball. Here you go, here you go. Tell us how much you love freedom. Look, John King, I mean, when he was interviewing Orrin Hatch says, this public option is deeply unpopular. And John King goes, all right, great point. Let's go to break. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe John King doesn't know. I mean, maybe he doesn't pay attention. Or he thinks, well, Orrin Hatch agreed to an interview with me, and that rocks. I got to make sure he comes back, so I'll let him get away with whatever he wants to say. Either way, it doesn't look pretty. All right, Young Turks, come right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Now we want to bring you an interesting guest, Russ Baker. He's an investigative journalist. He's written for The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, New York Times, Nation, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, etc. You get it. And he is the author of Family of Secrets, The Bush Dynasty, America's Invisible Government. Russ, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you very much.
Russ, let's start with a simple question of what is this book about? What do you mean, Family of Secrets and America's Invisible Government?
Well, some years ago, I started asking myself the question of how did George W. Bush, of all the possible people, manage to become the most powerful person in the world? And that may be a question that people just sort of don't care about or took for granted, but I was certainly curious. It was 2004. He was on his way to possible or probable re-election, and he was already enormously controversial man. And I wanted to know more about that. And so I spent 5 years trying to answer that question. I traveled all over the country, I interviewed hundreds of people, obtained thousands of documents. And what I discovered, much to my astonishment, was that there was a whole back history to the man, indeed not just to him, but to his father, to his whole family, and to the people who were behind them, that just completely changed my understanding of not only recent American history, but American history going back about 50 years. And so what the book is about is this whole backstory that we completely missed at our own peril, because it's about let's say very powerful forces that shape not just his presidency and not just his father's, but to some extent shape every presidency in our shaping Barack Obama's presidency right now.
Russ, first, your central question of how did a buffoon like George W. Bush get elected president is an excellent one. And there's no question that he's going to require a lot of help to get there. And I'm very curious as to what you found. But let me say up front that I'm both curious and a little skeptical, too, when people talk about invisible forces, etc. So I can't wait to see what you're going to say as to what those invisible forces were.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say that this week I have an article up on Truth Out, which is called What Obama is Up Against. It's the most popular article of the week on the site, and it basically raises the questions about how much he is able to do, particularly in the area of foreign policy and national security, given recalcitrant power centers within the government. When I talk about the invisible government, I'm talking about the fact that we focus so much on our elections and the visible democratic process and our choices, and this notion we have, which is really quite a quaint one, that we elect a person and this person tells us what they're going to do, we make the decision, and then they go about doing it, and that the government then falls into line. In fact, of course, we know certainly as far as other countries that they've never been able to just do whatever they want, because, in fact, our country and other powerful countries have been meddling in those other places. Large corporations have dictated to a great extent our foreign policy with regard to these other countries. We've been involved in overthrowing countless governments. I'm sure you know all about that, with Iran and Chile and Guatemala and on and on and on, not respecting democratic processes there. So the question is, who was behind those actions, those policies, and what is their attitude towards their own government? Do they suddenly feel that in the United States, well, let's let the average Tom, Dick, and Harry decide who runs the country, even though my own financial empire is at stake? My conclusion from this research, and this is not some theory, this is all documented, is that is not the case.
So, Russ, let's break it down. Like, when you say that companies in the past have controlled our foreign policy and who we depose in foreign countries, that's absolutely correct. That's why some of the Latin American countries were called banana republics. Banana republics. Funny Freudian slip there. Because banana companies in the U.S. didn't like a certain government. They wanted a new government, so they deposed them so they could make more money off of bananas. It's amazing what happened, and of course in Iran as well, as you pointed out. So that stuff has happened in American history. There's no question about it. Now, we tend to think that it's a little bit more transparent these days and that we're not going to overthrow a country. Obama's not going to overthrow a country because they're selling the wrong kind of bananas, to simplify the case, right? And I get that there are groups that profit from war, right, of course, and that there are deals with KBR and Halliburton, et cetera, that they make in Iraq, and they make more money, and of course it helps that the vice president is the former CEO of Halliburton. I acknowledge all of that. But how do you, what's the part of the theory where you say those guys are still controlling what's happening? Is it in who we get elected, or it doesn't matter who we got elected? They control things despite who we got elected.
Okay, let me try to see if I can blow your mind very succinctly here. Basically, first of all, in looking at George W. Bush and traveling around the country and talking to a lot of people who knew him, it was very, very clear to me he never would have been elected if his father had not already been president. They had the same first name, the same last name, the same supporters. So I began looking at the relationship between the father and the son. I was studying how it was that George W. Bush appeared to be able to skip out on 2 years of an obligatory 6-year military service. And as I studied that, discovered that there had been a whole cover-up. In Family of Secrets, I document all this more than anybody has before, and you'll see on the cover of the book blurbs like Gore Vidal calling it one of the most important books of the last 10 years, Dan Rather, who was affected by a lot of this with his career, saying it was a book that changed his mind about seminal events that he had personally covered.
Russ, I get that, of course.
All right, but let me explain what I'm saying here. So anyway, looking at George Bush and how he was able to evade the military service, I discovered that his father appeared to have been involved in covering all this up. His father was a high Republican official at the time. So then I thought, well, the father and the son actually were much closer than we understood them to be. They were painted as being as very different individuals, but they were really quite similar. So I began looking at the father, and as I looked at the father, I was struck by the fact that the father's whole career toward the presidency was very, very odd. And you remember he was director of the CIA in 1976. At the time, the New York Times and other papers mentioned the fact that he had no relevant experience, and they were sort of surprised he'd been chosen. What I discovered in my research was, in fact, he did have relevant experience. Secretly, he had been involved with the CIA prior to being named CIA director by Gerald Ford. He had, in fact, been a CIA officer of some type for his entire adult life. Now, that has never come out before, the notion that a president of the United States had a secret life, that he was being propelled first into the CIA directorship and later into the presidency by the CIA itself, and moreover by the people who created and really dominate the CIA itself. Now, who are those people? We go in a circle. Those are actually people connected back to the Bushes themselves. The man who was the architect, the creator of the CIA, was a man named Robert Lovett, and he was a business partner in an investment banking firm with Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Bush. These guys designed and created the CIA with their friend Allen Dulles, who was a lawyer for the United Fruit Company. You're talking about banana republics. They created the CIA in order to continue to carry out foreign policy in the interest of their companies. So that's what they did back then. That is still what is going on today. And these individuals make a major effort to try to determine and control either who is president or what they do once they get in. And if there's time, I'll explain more about that.
Russ, there's a very important distinction there. We're talking to Russ Baker. He's the author of Family of Secrets, The Bush Dynasty, America's Invisible Government. He's written for The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, New York Times, Washington Post, etc., and The Nation. So, Russ, if you tell me about the past, I hear you. I've read a little bit about the history of the CIA, and what they would do is it was almost like the Skull and Bones, and they'd go tap, well-connected families, rich families. They'd tap them on the shoulder, and they'd say, "Hey, do you want to work with us?" Right? And if you work with them, there are certain benefits, and if you don't, obviously, those benefits don't exist. And so, business interests and our national security interests were intertwined. I understand all that. But I think that there's a difference between the past and today. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, oh no, those guys have lost power or they have no interest in or no control at all anymore. No, I'm not saying that at all. But it's not, the CIA doesn't do that anymore. They don't tap people on the shoulder if you're from the right family, unless I'm mistaken. But I'm willing to hear you out on it. So I see that there is a transition, not a clean break, but a transition from the past to today. Was there, do you think, these same families and corporate interests who got together, I don't want to say in a smoky room, but that said, all right, you know what, we're going with W, and it's because we plan to make money off of W, and if that decision was made, how did they execute that decision?
Well, let me tell you something. These same families and these same interests are very much still present. They're extremely low key. And you have to go out to Texas and you have to look at the campaign finance reports and start seeing all these names who give enormous amounts of money and realize that you've never heard of these people before. See, they don't want to be visible. We focus, when we talk about business, all the attention goes to Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and things like that, people who have recent money. But the fact of the matter is that the backbone of this country has always been and will continue to be the extraction of natural resources. These are companies involved with mining and oil and all of these things domestically and all over the world, and we have absolutely no idea who they are. But the fact of the matter is, you can do without your BlackBerry, but in the end, when the lights and the heat goes out, we're dead, and that's what those people control, and they still do that, and they dominate much of the policy of this country. Just to give an example of continuing influence, in Family of Secrets, I talk about Bob Woodward. Now, Bob Woodward was involved in bringing down Richard Nixon. There's a whole backstory to Watergate of which I was not aware, although others had done some research on it. I did a lot more. I discovered, much to my astonishment, the fingerprints of CIA people, oil industry people, and so on in Richard Nixon's downfall. And I understand that in the short period that we've got here, I can't sketch it all out, but that's why I've got 600 pages and 1,000 footnotes and tons of documents in Family of Secrets to lay all of this out in great detail. But basically, what happened was Bob Woodward worked for Naval Intelligence, and he was bootstrapped right into his job at the Washington Post. He had worked with Alexander Haig before he got his job at the Post, and he was recommended by people in the White House, and he gets in there. And basically, the first thing he does is he starts working with military sources to undermine Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger because they're doing secret back-channel negotiations with America's enemies that have not been approved by these powers that be. And so 30 years later, you flash forward, and there's Bob Woodward still at the Washington Post. And now what he's doing is he's getting a leak of General McChrystal's report where he's pushing for 40,000 more troops in Afghanistan. This report was not supposed to be leaked, and it put pressure on Barack Obama to go ahead and do what the military and the military-industrial complex wanted him to do.
Right. Honestly, I'm a little skeptical about the Woodward Naval Intelligence Nixon thing.
That's all documented, my friend.
I mean, look, you can show me documents. I hear you. That's what those documents say.
Bob Woodward admits that he worked in top-secret naval communications.
Yeah, I know, but there's a difference between he worked in naval intelligence and he's part of this, invisible hand.
Let me tell you something. His own father and the Defense Secretary, Melvin Laird, are documented on tape on the Internet. People can go and listen to this, where they both say that he worked in the White House in top-secret capacities before he became a cub reporter at the Washington Post.
All right. Well, look, the book is called Family of Secrets, The Bush Dynasty, America's Invisible Government. I certainly agree with what's happened in the past. I agree that those people are still very powerful.
You want to be more comfortable,
and I feel like there's a transition, Russ, and we're getting better. We're nowhere near good. But I think the idea that these guys get together still today and go, okay, we choose Obama. No.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's take Jimmy Carter. That wasn't that long ago. Jimmy Carter decided that the CIA was dangerous and out of control, and he began to try to wrestle down the covert action function there. He tried to put in his own man. Wanted to put in Sorensen. That was vetoed. Now, how does the president get that vetoed? He was forced with a compromise to put in a Navy admiral.
So why didn't they? But then, Russ, why didn't they pick someone other than Carter? Why did they let Carter be president?
Well, a lot of these guys get neutralized to some extent. You have to understand something. Both Carter and also Barack Obama, these were unknown guys, and very early when they were starting in their campaigns to run for president, they were already being advised by people who were very closely connected into the Rockefellers, into the Council on Foreign Relations, and so on. This is how it works, and all you've got to do is talk to people who work in top law firms and things, and they will explain that they sit down and they say, who are the hopefuls for the presidency? Let's get in there and let's get some influence. I mean, everybody wants to do that,
yeah,
frankly.
everybody, look, that's very realistic. Everybody wants to get influence, and the more money you have, the more power you have, and the more influence you have. That's a normal part of life. We just apparently disagree a little bit on how much influence they have. I think that they have a lot of influence, and we got to keep our eye on them. And I appreciate that you're finding out the background on it and presenting that in your book. I just don't think they're quite as powerful today as they used to be.
Well, let me
we
ask
can
you
have a
something.
disagreement on that, and that's okay.
Did you ever imagine that the reformer Barack Obama would choose as his defense secretary Robert Gates?
Yes,
the
I
man
did.
who had been CIA director
Yes.
under Poppy Bush and defense secretary under George W. Bush?
I did, because Robert Gates was an excellent Secretary of Defense for George Bush. And I say that as a progressive. He had to clean up the worst Secretary of Defense in American history. Rumsfeld did a pretty good job in cleaning it up. Now, if you'd gone with the example of Geithner and Summers at Treasury and economic advisors, then I'm more inclined to agree with you. And that's why I say they're powerful, and they're a powerful interest because they have money. I get it. But I don't think we have to go into conspiracies to explain it.
Well, let me say something. First of all, I think that term conspiracy is an unnecessary pejorative, and it's anti-intellectual, because the fact of the matter is that I've got 25 years experience doing this stuff. Everything I am telling you come from documents and interviews with people who have personal knowledge about these things. It's very easy to speak abstractly about these things. It's another thing to deal with documentation. If you want to talk about some other things that are in the book, such as new information on the Kennedy assassination, I'd be happy to do it.
All right. We're out of time for today, but we might have you back to talk about that. It's certainly an interesting conversation. Russ Baker, the author of Family of Secrets. Thanks so much for coming on the show and tolerating my dissent, Russ.
Okay. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Okay. We'll be right back. Young Turks. All right. Back on the Young Turks. I was just checking our Twitter account, which there's been a lot of activity on today because we did the tweet bomb on CNN earlier where we told them, please cover the story that the American people want, the public option. And as I was checking our account, I never know how to pronounce any of these things. Amsood, A-M-S-S-O-O-D. You know who you are. Had a good suggestion for our next chant at our next event. Will the gentleman yield? No. Will the gentleman yield? No. I like it. I like it a lot. And a lot of people have made new suggestions about where to have the next rally, protest, whatever you want to call it, in front of Fox News instead of in front of CNN. That's a possibility. And then in different cities throughout the country. So let's think about it, and then we'll discuss it on air, and we'll figure something out. So give us time on that, and we'll bring you whatever we have next as soon as we have it. Now, I want to go back and talk a little bit about the elections that happened on Tuesday. CNN drove me crazy today for a different reason, about these elections, right, as opposed to the protests. I'm looking at their website, and Jesus, we got that screen capture? And they have these stories on what happened in the elections. And they got 3 headlines on it. 2 of them are okay. The third one is curious. So one headline here says, behind a Dem implosion in Virginia. Okay, there was a bit of an implosion in Virginia. Okay, that's fine. Then they say, how did the GOP take down the New Jersey governor? Okay, GOP did take down the New Jersey governor, fair. And then the third one says, these are all in the middle, both sides claim the win in New York 23. Now,
wait a minute.
hold up. Okay, yeah, the Republicans won in Virginia by a large margin. In New Jersey, a blue state, they took down the governor. Those are fair headlines. That's what happened, right? But there was no ambiguity about District 23 of New York. The Democrats took a seat that had been held for 150 years by the Republicans. Since the Civil War, the Republicans held that seat, and the Democrats took it for the first time. What do you mean both sides claim victory? What part of that is a victory for Republicans? That's a mental headline. It's because, I'm telling you, we've done this 100 times on the show. The mainstream media, the Republicans are always right for them. I mean, they haven't seen a Republican talking point that they didn't instantly fall in love with, that they didn't want to make love to and take home at night and treat tenderly. Okay? I mean, what the hell is... Dems may have won, and when you open up the article, here's what it says. The headline inside says, Dems may have won New York 23, but conservatives claim victory too. If your idea of victory is losing a seat you haven't lost in 150 years, well, I mean, you're mentally challenged. And if you report that as balance, that's balance, well, then you're mentally challenged. And the thing is, you say, well, look, Cenk, he said, she said, they're trying to be neutral, they're trying to be balanced. Well, then where was the balance in New Jersey and Virginia? Why didn't those headlines say, both sides claim victory in Virginia? Why didn't the headline say it? Because it didn't happen. The Democrats got their ass handed to them. See, we would never do that. You got to give people the facts. You can't pretend something didn't happen. But they've been so intimidated by the right. And now some say, and I'm beginning to wonder, it's not that they're intimidated by the right. Some say they're controlled by the same corporations in very, very subtle ways. They don't sit in a smoky room and say, all right, you, producer at CNN.com, give me that headline. No, but it seeps in. It seeps in. People get rewarded for, towing the Republican Party line, and they don't get rewarded if they do it for the Democrats or for progressives. And on CNN, I mean, we've covered this before. Dana Bash said when presented with the Harry Reid actually putting the public option in the Senate version, she said, oh, is this to make the liberals happy? Dana, your own network did a poll. 61% of Americans, according to CNN, want the public option. That's a huge majority. Are they all liberals? No, but on air, everything is derided. The liberals want the public option. Well, New York 23, it's split. This is not getting the truth to people. And and I'll tell you why I get so motivated by it, and so I get moved by it. Because when Bush said, Saddam Hussein had Saddam Hussein 9/11, Saddam Hussein 9/11, they mentioned him in the same sentence, and sometimes they would directly say that he had something to do with it. And CNN says, well, some people say he had something to do with 9/11, some people say he didn't. That's not journalism, that's crap. He didn't have anything to do with 9/11. Those are facts. You can't do he said, she said with facts. And what happened? All the way in 2006, 43% of Americans believe that Saddam Hussein was personally responsible for 9/11. That's how you mislead a country into war and to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. So it might be a small thing, but in the end, those small things add up to very, very large things. Now, when you go to try to find out in this article how the hell the conservatives can claim victory, you got to go to the end of the article where they quote a conservative blogger. Yeah, and I know CNN can't wait to quote liberal bloggers and put what they say in the title, right? How often does that happen? All right, anyway, so they go to Eric Erickson of Red State, and here's what Erickson says. The GOP must now recognize it will either lose without conservatives or will win with conservatives. Well, Eric, again, you seem to have issues with intelligence, as in you don't have any. You see, because a person with a minimum level of intelligence understands that you didn't win in New York 23. You lost. What does that quote mean? They'll either lose without conservatives or win with conservatives. But you didn't win. You didn't win with conservatives. You ran the guy you wanted, the most conservative guy in the race. And you lost. In fact, the exact opposite of what you said is true. You'll either lose with what you call conservatives, right-wing lunatics, or you'll win with moderates. That's the reality. And they take this guy as a legitimate source and put him as the balance in this story. And then he continues. He said, so we have demonstrated to the GOP, now he's saying, look, I'm a right-winger and the GOP is too moderate for me, right? So we have demonstrated to the GOP that it must not take conservatives for granted. The GOP had better pay attention. Okay, congratulations. We just paid attention to how you fools lost a seat that the Republicans hadn't lost in 150 years. How you guys are some of the dumbest political strategists in the country. What else do you need us to pay attention to? If I was the Republicans, I'd kick them out with a boot in their ass. I mean, but thank God the Republicans are dumb enough to listen to him. No, you listen to Eric Erickson. Please, in 2010, and then 2012, listen to Rush Limbaugh, listen to Sarah Palin, listen to Eric Erickson, and morons like this, and you lose every seat you have. And in fact, he's got plans. His last quote: "For all intents and purposes, New York 23 is a trial run for Florida. And in Florida, the conservative candidate is operating inside the GOP. If John Cornyn and the NRSC," that's the senatorial campaign for the Republicans, "do not want to see Florida go the way of New York 23, they better stand down." So what's happening in Florida? Charlie Crist is the moderate Republican. And we talked about him on the show. We don't agree with some of his stances, but the guy seems like he did a reasonable job. We're trying to look out and be fair and we don't, Republican, Democrat, we're actually trying to see what they did, right? So since he was in any way, shape, or form reasonable, the conservatives hate him. They're running this guy named Mark Rubio against him, okay? And so what Eric Erickson, the moron, is saying is, hey, you know what? We want to do for Florida what we did in New York 23. I'm going to say it one more time. You idiot. You lost in New York 23. You lost an unlosable seat. You couldn't possibly lose that seat except that you were so stupid that you did, right? Now, you're saying you want to do that again in Florida? You know what I'm going to say? You want to say it with me? Have at it, Hoss. Okay? You want to screw up the Florida Senate race for the Republicans? You want to take out Charlie Crist, who I think, in my honest assessment, is nearly guaranteed a victory if he makes it out of the primary? And you want to run Mark Rubio the clown and then lose the seat? I don't know why I'm angry. I mean, I should say, all right, go crazy. Lose every seat in the Senate and every seat in the House. The only reason I'm angry is because I want a reasonable opposition. I want there to be an intelligent debate in the country. And these morons are killing the Republican Party, and they're going to be a permanent minority. And then when you go to challenge, the Obama administration on anything they're doing wrong, your only choice is that the press will only listen to these fools. So you can make real case against what Obama's Treasury Department is doing. Instead, these guys come out and they're like, health care reform, they're against freedom-loving Americans. They're going to start a Holocaust. That's not a debate. Come on, man. That's a bunch of lunatics that just escaped from the asylum, and you're giving them equal coverage as if that provides you balance. You see, I'm worked up on this. So now, look, I don't think we have enough time for it here, but Charlie Crist came out and said, oh, yeah, I'm against the stimulus package. I never endorsed it because they're forcing him further and further to the right. He was the governor of Florida. He's running for the Senate now, and he's got a primary, right? What do you mean you didn't endorse it? Yeah, JR, we got time for that. Okay, let's play what Charlie Crist, how he introduced the president before, and his thoughts on the stimulus package. Go ahead.
Mr. President, welcome to Fort Myers, Florida. It's getting harder every day, and we know that it's important that we pass a stimulus package.
Oh, really?
It's important. It is important that we do so to help education, to help our infrastructure.
Really? I thought you didn't endorse it.
And to help health care for those who need it the most vulnerable among us. And let me finish by saying, Mr. President, we need to do it in a bipartisan way. This issue of helping our country is about helping our country. This is not about partisan politics. This is about rising above that, helping America, and reigniting our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Florida welcome to President Barack Obama.
Yeah, oopsie doopsie. Today on CNN, Charlie Crist said, quote, I never endorsed the stimulus package. I didn't endorse it. I didn't even have a vote on the darn thing. What happened, Charlie? They're running you to the right, aren't they? By the way, you're going to love this part. Charlie Crist has a website up where he brags about all the stimulus money that's coming into Florida and takes credit for it. He has example after example. There's quotes in there. I'm grateful for the federal dollars coming to our state for economic recovery. He set up a whole website saying how he's in favor of the stimulus package. Here's another quote from Crist. It's getting harder every day, and we know that it's important that we pass the stimulus package. What happened, Charlie? What happened was the clowns like Rush Limbaugh and Sarah Palin are chasing you to the right, joined by Michael Steele, who said today that if the people aren't conservative enough, candidates like Charlie Crist, quote, will come after you. I'm going to stop giving them advice. You know what? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go crazy, man. Take them all out of the party, lose every damn election. Maybe we'll get a new party. We'll get a reasonable debate in here. These guys are headed to extinction. Young Turks.